And you're on.
Thank you. Good evening. We've already started the meeting in an open session before going into executive session. We're now reconvening in open session. Per Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the public will not be allowed to physically access this school committee meeting. Members of the public can access the meeting via Montague Community Television broadcast. The extension of the emergency open meeting law provisions were signed into law as Chapter 20, Section 20 of the Acts of 2021. The school committee reserves the right to implement additional remote participation procedures and will notify the public of these procedures as it is practical. Any members of the public who wish to join the meeting may do so by accessing the link. It's located on the GMRSD website, and it can be found under School Committee Notices and Agendas for upcoming meetings, and you have to find tonight's school committee meeting date. We are also we're live streaming as well as broadcasting on MCTV, and a recording will also be available afterwards on MCTV and the district website, usually within a day or so. If you are joining us in the Zoom audience, please keep the cameras and the microphones off. Thank you. Welcome to visitors again. This is the time we would have public participation. It has been reinstated to hold it remotely under policy BEDH, but we don't have any people requesting it this evening. So we will continue by going on to important events. Brian?
Thank you. Tomorrow, Wednesday, March 23rd, is an early release day. On Monday, we started the period of mask optional for students and staff at all schools. Monday, March 21st, also marked the beginning of spring athletics for the high school and the middle school. I did want to make a note that Sina won't be able to join us tonight related to this item because she's part of the musical production that's taking place this weekend, and it's obviously a big week leading into the actual production, which will be held on Friday and Saturday night, both at 7 p.m. and Sunday, March 27th, the Turners Falls at 2 p.m., the Turners Falls High School production of Mary Poppins. Tuesday, March 29th will be Sheffield School Council, and Wednesday, March 30th will be Friends of Hillcrest. And that's it for events that I have.
Okay, thank you. And as Brian already mentioned, Sina is occupied this evening. I'm sure she'll join us next time. So attendance report, Brian.
Oh, sorry. I should have just continued on.
Okay.
I did want to recognize what was a really fantastic event on Friday night, where there were several hundred people in attendance. The high school Rise Up class held an event called Dodge for a Cause. And the Rise Up class is a Turners Falls High School course where students in grades 9 through 12 learn leadership and communication skills through team building and community service. Last Friday evening, the class held their annual dodgeball tournament. The activity allows students to learn how to plan and host an event for the community. The proceeds from the fundraiser are then used by the students in their community service mapping project. The class identified community needs, defines capacity to implement, writes proposals, and then they will construct a project that will help members of our community. The most recent projects from previous years were lunch boxes and toiletry totes that address issues that were identified of food security and hygiene needs. I had the opportunity to observe the breakdown today. Is Faith Bloom, who is the teacher of the class and advisor to the group, invited me to watch them deliberate, and it was really fascinating and heartwarming and encouraging to see a group of students who really deeply care about those less fortunate than us in the community. And as much fun as they had for the event, they're looking for opportunities to get out there and help take care of people. So this past Friday, the dodgeball tournament raised $1,000, and this beat the group's previous record of $860. They had a record 18 competitive teams, including the winners, Quiet Hours, whose members are all Turners Falls High School alumni. And each of those Turners Falls High School alumni also donated their $100 prize back to the cause rather than taking it with them. So thank you to Quiet Hours. In addition, the Montague Police Association made a generous donation to the group in place of sending a team as they have done in the past. They had approximately 115 players and 215 spectators divided into 2 brackets. I wanted to say thank you to Faith Klum and the many, many students, parents, and members of the school community who helped make this a really fun way to pull a community together and a great way to spend a Friday night in between athletic seasons and performances. To have that gym filled with people who were laughing and messing around with each other and hitting each other with dodgeballs was really encouraging. And knowing that it's all going to a good cause and a really diverse learning experience for students is fantastic. So again, congratulations to Faith and her students. I did also want to congratulate high school principal Christopher Barnes and Director of Teaching and Learning Gene Powers for being awarded a $40,000 competitive grant that will help the high school offer 3 new elective courses in the field of engineering. The press release that has a few more details about that grant is attached to this report. But I wanted to say thank you in particular to Ms. Powers and Mr. Barnes for doing that work to secure that grant. As far as COVID-19 information, the trends in statewide, regional, and local cases continue to show a decline in both cases and percent positivity. In addition, I did want to note that the district's pool testing samples have not yielded a positive case for any of the 3 weeks since returning from February vacation. So that's an enormous number of people who are PCR tested from our buildings, and all the pools are coming back clean. I will continue to include, unless for some reason we begin to see zeros across the board, our 2 towns in our area towns. The CDC continues to rank us as low in Franklin County for the risk of transmission. And I did want to make note that the next meeting with high school students for members of the school committee will be on Friday, April 1st at 9:10 a.m. And prior to that date, I will send an email out probably at the beginning of that week or at the end of the previous week to see if anybody is available to attend or interested in attending and meeting with students. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Questions for Brian on his presentation? Okay, thanks a lot. The next item is the business and operations report, and that's Joanne.
Okay, I just want to let you know that the GIC health insurance rates did come out, and the average increase was 6% for our active plans. And we didn't budget that much, but when we budget for our plans, we're budgeting based on our enrollees in November, and we also add new plans. We assume we're going to have, 5 to 8 new plans. And so as people move around on the plans and maybe go to some less expensive plans, we'll probably, for our active employees, we'll probably be in deficit for that line. But the retiree plans came in at a lower rate. Their increases were just closer to 1 to 4% increase. And so the majority of our people are sitting on plans that are just 1% increase. So I think the savings there will help to offset the overage in the regular. So I expect that we'll break even. Our dental insurance rates came in exactly the same, no change to those. We wouldn't pay extra, but that saves our employees money. So because the way our dental insurance works is we pay a set dollar amount toward the plan. John?
On my Zoom link, that document doesn't open. It says not accessed, not that I need it right away, but
Oh, my report?
just the one on the budget transfer didn't open.
Oh, it didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can look at it and make sure it's
Okay.
set up right so it can open. So that was the GIC health insurance. The solar farm. So I reached out to the person that had contacted me, and he was not available to come to the meeting this evening. So he gave me more information, and he talked about what we can do. And so he said that we can use this program. It doesn't affect our contract. We can get the 10%, but remember, it's 10% on a smaller amount. So if we think about our home electric bills, 10% would be 10% because we're not going over their maximum. But in the schools, I pulled our usage, and even our smallest schools would go over that amount. So it feels like a lot of discussion to be had when the savings on our over $300,000 worth of electric would be a $4,000 savings, approximately. So, he continues to say there's no strings attached. You can sign up for this. It's a 10% savings, but it's $4,000 from over 300,000. I don't know if we want to move forward with this. I'm not recommending that we do. It just feels like a 20-year commitment to something for this year. $4,000 savings this year doesn't seem that big. If it was $40,000, that would be a big number. But when you're thinking about the size of our electric bills, 4,000 isn't that significant. But I wanted to bring this back to you with a little bit more information. It's in the business items. We can talk about it more then if you'd like.
Bill, did you have your hand up? Bill?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know I was recognized. What's the beginning question is, what's the 10% discount from? And then when you get past the 10% discount, then what is the rate at that time? There must be set numbers. And right now, if you look at several examples, some of them are 10 cents a kilowatt, and some of them are 13 or 14 cents a kilowatt. But unless I know, just speaking personally, what it's a 10% discount from, then I have no clue as to what to think about it, other than to think this doesn't sound like a good deal.
Right. And that's where I was heading to. So the 10% is on our total dollar amount, right? Except it can only go up to being based on the 52 kilowatt hour. So if you, like you said, 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and we're saving 10% of our total cost. So the total savings ends up being about $4,000. So I'm just looking at total dollar amount, figuring out what the kilowatt cost per kilowatt hour is, and then backing into what 10% would be of that, up to 52,000 kilowatt hours. So I'm coming up with just under $4,000 for the savings. Now, how our kilowatt hours balance out, because they're different from school to school, I don't think that really matters. I think what it just is the 4,000. I took the average. I took the total cost divided by total kilowatt hours, got the 52, figure out what the price is for those 52, and took 10%.
So he's guaranteeing you that he's not going to charge you, whatever institution is behind this is not going to charge more than what we're being charged already from Eversource or wherever. I mean, you're all, anyway.
Yeah, it feels like a risk. It does feel like a risk to me.
I think it would be different too, if you might remember from our discussion from the last meeting, that if it were for a year or 2 or 3, but they're looking for a 20-year commitment. And I think that makes it somewhat unappealing.
This is a very basic question. Who owns the panels? Would it be the company or the district?
It's not our panels. It's Solstice. There would be panels somewhere. They're not even on our property. And we would be buying into those, not buying into, but we would be getting a benefit from those panels that are somewhere else.
You'd be a customer
Right.
of a service net, which is half of them are down in their main offices, or excuse me for just digressing, but a lot of them are centered in Texas. And so they're national associations of energy producers that are making some things out of solar and some of it isn't, but I would still need to know what they're basing the price on, not what we currently spend, but how is that going to change? And then I would like to simply add that we do already get a benefit, I believe, from the solar field in Montague over the old dump. Some of the proceeds of that are earmarked for the schools, at least they were a couple years ago.
Yes.
And to that extent, I'm happy with solar. But as an assessor for the town of Gill, right now, I'm having a problem with some of these solar companies because of issues that I'm facing for the town of Gill. And they're not related directly to what you're talking about, but it relates to the, in my mind, to the ethics of some of these companies as they navigate through the incentives for solar production in our country to get away from fossil fuels. And it isn't a real clean burn right now. That's just a personal opinion. It's not based on any facts that you guys know, but that's life.
But it's more than I know.
Yeah, I know, I was gonna say, and once upon a time, we had a proposal to put our own solar panels over our parking lots at the schools, and that just went away. That's another question, Joanne, that I'll ask you to tell us about some other time. Because
Yeah.
it just never, because somebody said, why don't you have those? I went, I don't remember, but we could
Yeah.
look into them.
I'll have to go back and look too.
Yeah.
So, so the town of Montague money that we get from the solar is a lot more than this $4,000. So we are getting some benefit from solar. You're
Yeah.
right, Bill. And this 10%, it's just off the cost, 10% off the cost, but only up to that certain amount of money, $4,000.
Okay. And
Not a
as
big number.
Joanne said, it's in the business section. So when we come to that, we'll take an official vote so people can think.
I think Heather's had her hand up for a while.
Oh,
Sorry. Are you good,
I-
Heather? Sorry.
If we're going to talk about it further, I can wait until then. It's
I
fine.
mean, you're welcome to now. I can't always tell with your hand today because your
I know,
background like keeps
disappearing. I was just curious if anyone did ask the energy committee in town what they thought about it.
Well, when I talked to Ken, he said that he did not send this offer to the Energy Committee in Montague, and he doesn't work with the Energy Committee in Gill. So because he didn't send this, I'm having trouble explaining it to you. I didn't want to have to try to explain it to more people, so I didn't go there.
All right. And Bill, just so you know, this solar farm is in Lanesboro, so it's a local. It's a business that does this. And they just get like subscribers. I imagine they get quite the rebates, and so they can charge us less. That's my guess from looking at it. So, but it's still not a lot of information about them.
No, it's not something that I'm comfortable, really terribly comfortable with. But I wanted to bring it back with a little bit more information and, although still not enough. But
Okay, and we will
because
vote
the
on it.
dollar amount's 4,000, it didn't feel like I should put too much energy into it. The budget transfers for review, those should be accessible now. Tina fixed those when we were talking. So those are just for your review. Those are transfers that we made in January and February. And then the last thing I have is the statement of interest for the Gill roof, but I think that's also in the business section.
There's also Montague Elementary School buildings.
Oh, right. Yes, I don't have that on my list. So let's see if we can share our screen with that. Brian, do you have it up?
I don't, but it's obviously it's linked. You can just open the link from the agenda, or you may be better off using the actual
Yeah, I'm going to it.
slides.
I have it up. Do you need it?
I also have it up. I don't, if it's helpful, I don't know.
I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay, here we go. So this is the same presentation that we brought to the select board. This is, a lot of the documents are the same as what you've seen here at school committee. Just gonna get us out of the way here. So the first screen you see here is our enrollments at the Montague Elementary Schools. So you can see the numbers dropped for the pandemic, but they are coming back. The numbers are increasing again. So in October of 21, we have 145 kids at Hillcrest, where we had 162 5 years ago. So the grade that's lower is that first grade class. You see that there was a bubble in 17. And then at Sheffield, our numbers really didn't drop for the pandemic, but they're down a little bit this year. And again, that's the second grade class. That's a little bit smaller than some of the other grades. So our overall enrollment is 352 at the two schools, down from 378 5 years ago. So that's, not a big enrollment decline. And if we go back even farther, we see that the enrollment at these two elementary schools has remained pretty consistent. So we have 3 classrooms at each grade level in each of these schools. And in 1 year during my time here at Gill-Montague, one of the classes, we had a bubble class where we had 4 classrooms of that grade level, but that was only for a couple of years. So we looked at the building condition assessments that we had done a couple of years ago, and we just pulled the first 5 years of all of the repairs and capital needs that these buildings would have and put together a summary of those. So the overall total is nearly $7 million over the first 5 years. Now, it's hard to put $7 million into these 2 old buildings. What you end up with is 2 old buildings with some renovations. So we're keeping up with things that need to be done, but we thought it'd be important to start a conversation about maybe the need for new buildings. So here are our floor plans. This is Hillcrest. This is Sheffield, first floor, and then Sheffield, the second floor. Brian, do you want to talk about this?
Sorry, I was muted. So for Hillcrest, pre-K through grade 1, there are 3 classrooms at each grade level. Sheffield also has 3 regular classrooms at each grade level. And I did include the middle school in here as well, not that we're looking at building a new middle school building, but really to indicate that there isn't very much space up there that would provide us an opportunity to move a class or, like the 5th grade, say, over to the middle school building. It just wouldn't be feasible. That being said, that using the remainder of the building for specialists and service providers, as well as special education teachers, as well as related arts, really takes up the remainder of these buildings. And so all of the space really is being used, and the buildings, and when you look at the building condition assessments, and in particular Hillcrest, really is going to require significant repair work through over the course of the next 20 to 30 years to keep that building up and running. The
Right,
principals,
some of those major needs are, heating, cooling, flooring, ceilings, facade, the roof. I mean, major things.
and over time,
And-
certainly plumbing as well.
Right. So we also had the principals and curriculum director take a look at what our needs are in our buildings. And so see, these are some of the things that they discussed.
Yeah, the consideration for classrooms for specials in art. So for art has its own classroom, elementary music here at Sheffield is on the stage in the old auditorium, and so there's not a classroom available for that particular related art. We need space for service providers such as psychologists and counselors. Hillcrest itself, almost all activities, including physical education when it's inside, is happening in that large common room that's used that has that mini stage in there. So there really isn't adequate space for what we would like to ultimately deliver in terms of an education. And again, Sarah Burstein, Jean Powers, Diane Ellis, and Melissa Petrat really began at our request to put together a list of things that needed to be taken into consideration, because when school districts put in statements of interest, those that are most likely to be considered are those that talk about the educational needs of the facility, as opposed to just, we need a new building. So we wanted to be able to take the time, take a few moments before talking to any of the town boards or the school committee itself, to be able to identify some things that would need to be taken into consideration in proposing such a project.
So I looked at some MSBA projects over the past several years to see what a building with about 400 kids would cost to build and like to add on. Take, let's say, we recently put windows in the Sheffield Auditorium and Gym. And so the Sheffield Auditorium and Gym has recent MSBA funding tied to it, which means you cannot shut down that portion of the building without paying back money that you got from MSBA. So, the idea maybe it would be to make an addition onto Sheffield, do a renovation, sort of like the high school renovation when we added the middle school to it. And so the average cost for that was about $55 million. Now, if we go back to our MSBA project for the windows, we had a 76% reimbursement rate from MSBA. So MSBA would pay 41 million of that. So Montague's share would be left around 13 million. Over 20 years, the cost of that would be about $825,000. And then the average cost to keep up with the capital project list from the building condition assessment reports for the next 5 years, if we were to keep up with that, would be on average almost 1.4 million. So over 20 years, 825 to get a new building, or continuing to put money into old buildings, seem to make sense that we at least talk about this. And I have links in this file where you can see some educational facility planning reports. That's something that we could have done, an educational planning report like we did with the building reports. And so there's a couple of them there for you to take a look at. So when we we wanted to bring this to your attention. We wanted to bring it to the town's attention. There's an MSBA window application that opens for core projects, which would be a new building or an addition project, addition renovation project. And that opens in January and it closes at the end of April each year. Now, we have been talking about a playground at Hillcrest with the town of Montague through a grant, a block grant. And so that is pending, that is potentially in process pretty soon. Not heard too much more about the grant, but we did a study on that, and that was on the docket to be reviewed. So one thought, for a Hillcrest playground, you don't want to put a expensive playground in only to close a building. But building projects don't happen overnight. Building projects take quite a few years. So even if we were to submit this application in April and somehow get approved this year, we wouldn't have a new building for probably 5 years by the time we went through this process with MSBA. It'd take at least, I would say, 5 years from now to have that building ready to move into. So we still need to look at significant needs for our buildings for the next couple of years and make sure that we're just keeping up with the repairs. So we had the floors that the town of Montague approved the floor replacement at Hillcrest. So that work will be being done this summer. We have money already approved for some facade work, not the complete facade work, but some. The boiler is going to need to be reviewed over at, or taken a look at pretty soon over at Hillcrest, as that has some issues. It's pretty old. And the roof, we've had roof issues that we've been chasing around. So those are areas that we need to continue to look at in these, at least at Hillcrest. But we thought we needed to start these conversations, do more research, and just put this out front. So I don't know if you want to have a conversation now or if you want to wait until the business section.
I didn't see it in the business
Okay.
section.
So now's the perfect time.
That's what I think. Jennifer.
Thank you. Wow, that's a lot of potential questions for my brain. There was one screenshot where you projected 21, 20, sorry, maybe it was like 22, 3, 4, 5, whatever. And the roofing cost, it looked like was $528,000. We don't need to maybe talk about these specifics, but I guess the one question is, are those projected costs based on some sort of math of inflation, or is that just like maybe worst case scenario?
No, I think that's a really not worst
Low
case
number.
scenario price. I think that number would be considerably more than that. But it
And
could
that would be
covered
for
by
Hillcrest?
MSBA. That would be Hillcrest roof.
Jeez,
And then we
okay.
could need a roof on some of the Sheffield buildings coming up soon also. So an MSBA roof for Sheffield. So once you get MSBA, one of the things that you're telling MSBA is we are planning to keep this school open for the long term. Right? So do we want to do that with the Hillcrest building? Do we want to assume that building is going to be open for the next 20 years? And that would be the only reason we would want to apply for MSBA for a roof for that building, which would pay for 75% of the cost.
Yeah, so it sounds like the most, well, maybe this isn't what you're saying, but when I look at this, it sounds like you're saying maybe keep Sheffield because we already have this commitment through previous MSBA transactions, that we would potentially build off of Sheffield for a Hillcrest. Maybe it's off of the building, maybe it's on the same space, maybe they have more shared space. I don't know exactly, and I don't mean to put words in anyone's mouths. And then I'm curious then, since that landscape includes Hillcrest currently, is there a potential to use the Hillcrest building for something else? Something school related, something, I don't know, like shop class or like sewing class or something like that? And then, or is the idea to like, get rid of the building and just use the exterior space as sort of a shared outdoor space for the students?
So I can answer some of that.
Okay.
The town owns the building. So I think the idea would be to stop using it as a school because that's the problem. It's getting old and there's a lot of issues with it. And it took a long time, but the Montague Center School, once that was closed, was sold and then changed into condos. And as
Okay.
was the one in Miller's Falls. So,
Right.
Perhaps that's where it would go.
In the reimbursement scale, you said they reimburse the 75%. Was that the percentage?
That's the estimate because it was 76%, and that's based on what we received from MSBA for our window project. But they look at our poverty levels and they decide each year what a rate would be, but they only tell you what that rate will be if you apply. You can't just call and say, hey, what would our rate be if we did a project? And then there's also incentives on the rates. So you'd start with a rate based on your poverty, and then you could get it increased based on if you do solar or if you do, energy, green energy, or, there's different incentive points that they give you.
And I also get that I'm a little bit all over the place because I took sort of sporadic notes when I was going through all of this. But just as a fundamental question, is the issue, it sounds like, is a combination of the buildings being old and also space, because you had listed those
That's right.
ideal scenarios where there wasn't current space for these ideal situations like makerspace, et cetera, or like Superintendent Beck was saying, for a gym or physical education space at Hillcrest. So is it primarily the building or is it primarily the space? Like, what is driving, if you had to prioritize either of those, like which of those are you prioritizing?
I would say it's the state of the physical plant is expensive, but part of engaging in a conversation about this project, we wanted to start at also to be prepared to begin to build an educational picture of how it could be better in a new building, because that's part of the argument that we need to bring to MSBA. So yes, those are all concerns right now, but we certainly can work with them. It's not ideal, but it has more to do with the state of the physical plant. And I think that was part of the discussion with the Capital Improvement Committee that did a tour of the building. Joanne, was that last summer? That they,
I don't remember when they did the tour. It was a while ago.
Yeah, it was either last spring or last summer.
Yeah, I think I saw Cassie's hand as well, and then John.
I'm good. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Yeah, John.
So if I understand this, it seems that if under the current conditions, it looks like the repairs are projected to cost about $1.3 million per year for the next 5 years. But if we went for the construction route, because the town's portion is $13 million, we would be looking at paying that off over 20 years at $850,000. Is that correct?
That would be, those are just estimates, but yes, that's more like what we would be looking at. Now, we didn't go to the town and say, we need 1.4 million for the repairs this year, because that's unreasonable, right? So the repairs that we need aren't the repairs that we can get. The repairs that we need to look at them and isolate them and choose, make some decisions about what we really need for that building, what has to happen. Because it's unreasonable to think that we can get that much money each year for the next 5 years.
Yeah. And so as I understand this, the state reimburses Probably somewhere around 76%. Is that correct?
Yes.
But now I'll just tell you, in California, we have to go to the taxpayers of the district, and we would go for like a 67% approval, or maybe it went down to 55%. So it's a lot better here, not having to go ask the taxpayers to pony up the entire thing on a bond.
Well, when the vote happens, the vote is for the full amount.
But the
Then-
state is going to be paying us back a
Oh, yeah.
good portion of that.
Yes,
Well, not quite
they will.
sure. Okay,
Yep.
that's healthier than California.
Yes.
Bill?
Yeah, I agree with your assessment, Joanne, about how the amount of money that you need each year, you haven't been able to get. And the point that I'd bring forward with that is one of the reasons that we are consistently high in the maintenance of that building, Hillcrest I'm talking about, is probably because we've never done the full boat to refurb the building. I can tell you that 35 years ago, the roof was a problem, especially the dome roof over the common room with the stage. And partly because it has a nice skylight too. But all of that aside, I would think that you could also propose putting an addition on to Hillcrest just as an alternative, as opposed to putting an addition on Sheffield. I wouldn't tear Sheffield. If I was going to tear part of Sheffield down, unfortunately, it would be your offices.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
If you were
I
talking
hate
about,
to lose over each door on the ends of the building is boys on one end and girls on the other. But
yeah, that's a really good example of deferred maintenance and, putting things forward, that section of the building in particular, it's kind of patch. And
But
we
I
do
did
have-
I just wanted to ask Joanne, I know in your presentation, you brought forward that Hillcrest was overcrowded and it's overcrowded because of the number of programs that instances that can't be held as in you listed them on your form, on your PowerPoint there, but is that it more than student population? It's access to services, having designated space for services. Is that the overcrowding?
Yeah, if we just had classrooms for each grade level, we'd have plenty of room in both of these buildings, but we have other services that we need to provide. Education today looks different than education looked in the 50s, right?
Yeah, it
It's
does.
been a long time since these buildings were built, and education looks completely different now than it did then, but that building was built in the 50s. Even Sheffield, where the students are, that was built in the 80s.
Yeah.
The late 80s. So, and that was after the fire. So that building, even that building is getting old. Now, the high school building was built in the 70s, the original, and then it was renovated in 2000. It was renovated 30 years later. And the addition was, so Sheffield is more than 30 years old now, and it's not been renovated. Hillcrest is 60, 70 years old.
Mhm.
So, Diane?
Thanks. Heather and then Diane.
And Bill, I think that we're suggesting Sheffield because we already have the MSB window project there, so we can't leave that building. But from my kids being in both, I don't love just building things to build things. And I would not have suggested this, but looking at the numbers and thinking about both of the schools, adding on either to Sheffield or building something different, maybe having enough room for everyone together wouldn't be such a bad idea. Oh, I guess we can't do that either. But parking alone at Hillcrest is a nightmare. Honestly, I never felt safe bringing my kids out the main entrance Because there just isn't adequate parking, never mind, no library. Like literacy is a huge thing. How can our youngest kids not have access to a library every single day? And so, yeah, I mean, it's certainly the time to start looking into the options. And I'd love to hear what we come up with.
Thanks. Diane?
Y'all hear me?
We can hear you, but you're speaking softly.
The volume's a little quiet.
All right, I'm trying to adjust
better-
my volume.
There you go.
You got it now.
Thank you. Sorry. Well, I was just going to chime on to what Joanne had said. I mean, one, there are bubble classes, and so our buildings are limited in our ability to accommodate those larger groups. I think the other piece of that is that, you know, the more we know about education, I mean, students really benefit from having access to breakout small group learning spaces. So some of the spaces that are currently being utilized at Hillcrest aren't well designed for the purpose in which we're trying to use them. So the acoustics of the space, the general, so then we are trying to figure out dividers and furniture and sound treatment so that we can make space better for children from, you know, small group literacy intervention or small group special ed intervention, or if we have children who, you know, require some sound accoutrements because of being deaf or hard of hearing, you know, we aren't in a good position to serve those students in our district because of the limitations of our building space. So I just, I think being able to, and I'm a resident of Montague, and my children went through the Gill-Montague schools, and I will say that there's, in addition to the function of how a new building and the design of a new building is to meet sort of diverse student needs, there's also kind of a curb appeal for parents when we start looking at, you know, playgrounds that are ADA accessible. We start looking at buildings that have sound systems and, you know, modern sort of modern systems in place. I worked in the Athol Royalston system as a principal, and our building, at one point, our building had 11 leaks happening in the roof at one time. And I had to go around as a principal and count the number of building leaks. And so I know that Athol Royalston made the choice of counting, you know, combining schools and building a new school. And it was really, a positive for their community having that. So I just wanted to chime in. Thank you.
Thanks. I think I saw John and then Cassie. You're muted, John.
What would happen in the event, say, the town approves to new construction, and then 6-town regionalization occurs, and now the district is 6 towns instead of 2? How is the $13 million apportioned under that event?
The
Doesn't
6-town regional study doesn't involve elementary schools in the 6 towns.
Okay.
Right.
That's,
And the
Yeah.
building would belong to the town of Montague, so it would be paid for by the town of Montague.
Okay.
okay. Cassie?
I don't mean to rush anyone, but it's about 7:20 and we haven't even started on the business. So I know that this is really important. And I think this has to be an ongoing conversation.
I think
But
that's a great
just,
suggestion. Yes,
I just
I
wanna
think
put
so
that out
too,
there.
because I want to get in a few points next time about, you know, proactive education and the need at early levels. I think that's great.
yeah,
So we should-
definitely a conversation that needs to be
I
started.
think we should put this on, you know, to continue the discussion, and at some point, probably we'll need a vote once we've done that. But not this
Right.
evening. Yeah.
Right. If we're going to want to submit a statement of interest, we would need the support of school committee, we would need the support of the town of Montague. And then we could submit. Now, you know, I mean, it could take 5 years. It could take 5 tries of submitting this application before MSBA approves it, and then 5 years to build. It could be 10 years from now before we get a building.
Jennifer?
Yeah, sorry, just what's the deadline for this year? Did you say it was April?
It's the end of April.
to submit for this year?
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess my vote would be we decide, we try to, if we're gonna, it makes sense to, if we're gonna try to get this worked out before the end of the submission date so that we can at least try, because from what I understand from that select board meeting that you guys presented to, that often there isn't acceptance the first year.
Right.
So from what I heard at that meeting.
Yes.
So
Yep.
I've been having trouble with being unstable this evening. This new spot is not better, I must say. Am I back?
I got
Yes.
a quick comment.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bill.
Quick comment, and then I forget what it is. That's all right.
Okay.
Spaced out.
Right, but we will bring it up again, and we will need to put it on listed
Oh.
as a vote if we're going to vote. Bill?
I know what it was. It is in the interim, in either case of what happens, if it's going to take 5 years to resolve, to get a new building, for example, or even the additions. What kind of planning are we doing, say, modular classrooms to, or otherwise, to address the shortages that we do have and that you all see a need to address? And I see a need to address them too.
Right, and we'll definitely include those. Thank you. Yep. Okay. I think, Joanne, that finishes your section, I believe.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Moving on to school committee reports. Under the warrant subcommittee, we need approval for 3 different warrants this time. If it's acceptable, I'll entertain a motion for all 3 after I read them.
I'll move it.
Okay, I think I do have to read them for the public. The first is warrant number 3228. It's a high school student activity account. They're all dated 3/23/22. This high school activity account is in the amount of $3,392.36. Warrant number 3227 is also a high school activity account, student activity account, for $1,210.07. And the third is warrant number 3226, which is an accounts payable, paying our bills. Also the same date, in the amount of $323,936.33. I believe Bill moved it.
I will now.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Heather, thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
I know this isn't all the item, but it's so good that I have to read it all. What is a Boom Whackers XT8G xylotote tube holder?
All right, Joanne, take it.
Xylo means wood. And as a xylophone has got wooden slats you hit to get a scale. This isn't like a wood carrier for my wood stove, right? It's something to carry a musical instrument, tote it
I'm gonna
around.
say it's not for your wood stove, but
It's-
I'd have to look at it and see what the vendor is to see
Right, I
that
was saying,
description.
but
It's okay. It's for the music department,
Okay,
and
good.
it's right under a 4-pack of 9-inch half tambourines. I know what they are.
Okay,
We'll refer that to the proper department, Bill, and they'll give you a call.
boom
You check
whacker.
it
We'll
out.
find out.
Okay, all those in favor, Cassie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jennifer,
yes,
John,
Yes.
and me, yes, thank you. Moving on to the business section of the meeting, we need to review and approve proposed changes to the Turners Falls High School Program of Studies. This does require a vote, and I believe we'll have a summary of the adjustments because we do have the whole packet, but a summary of the changes is what will help us know what we're doing.
Yeah, filling in, pinch hitting for Christopher Barnes, who is at a banquet for one of his children this evening is Gene Powers. And so Gene's going to just review the summary of changes rather than going through the entire document.
Thank you, Jean. Hi.
Hi. So I'm going to share my screen and walk through the document with everyone. So we are highlighting just the adjustments that are being made for the 2022-2023 school year in the program of studies. So the first is a change in biology. So biology currently is taught over 2 years, biology 1 and biology 2, where students would take the MCAS in 10th grade for biology. And based on some of the conversations we've had with the science department at the high school, it's really extending the time between students taking these courses and bringing it into one single course of biology. Students will begin taking that in their 9th grade year and take the biology MCAS at the end of 9th grade. So the benefit of that is there's not 3 tests during the 10th grade year. It gives the 9th grade year 1 test, so students are, continuing to stay familiar with the material as it gets closer. So the big shift that happens here is we are making biology a designated requirement for graduation. So the 1 full year course of biology, and it will cover everything that Bio 1 and Bio 2 were presenting. And we will have some adjustments next year for students who have taken in their 9th grade year this year as 10th graders next year. If they took biology 1 in the fall, we will need to offer biology 2 for next year to ensure that they get the full course before they take the MCAS. But all 9th graders and any 10th graders who didn't take biology 1 this year or biology 2 this year will take the full course next year. So we have a year of kind of switching things around and ensuring that all students have access, but biology will continue to be a graduation requirement, and it will be taken during 9th grade. The next major change is American history and culture. So we do 2 full years of American history and culture 1 and 2. Previously in 9th grade, students took modern world perspectives, and we are switching that to a upper level class in 11th grade and moving American history culture 1 to be a 9th grade class, American history culture 2 to be a 10th grade class. And the reason we're doing that is in 8th grade, students now take a civics course recently that has come from the state. And so the civics builds nicely into kind of what is typically US history 1, US history 2. And modern world perspectives becomes a 11th grade course that students can take. So again, we'll be making some shifts next year and ensuring that we offer what students need as American history and culture 1, 2, and modern world are graduation requirements. So again, that shift will happen for next year, and we will need to make some adjustments as we move forward. And therefore, there'll be no modern world perspectives next year offered. Personal finance was a business course, and we have moved this into the math section. So in conversations with a number of districts in the area, a lot of schools do offer personal finance as a 5-credit math course. And this gives a nice option for students who want to take this in their 4th year of math, who may not take a higher upper level class of math, or a student who is in the upper level math but wants to take personal finance. I think it's a really important class. And unfortunately, it does remove all business classes. So we don't have any business classes offered for next year. However, with some of the innovation pathway planning that we're doing, kind of future building, we will be hoping to bring more business related classes back to the program of studies. Another shift for next year is in order to improve class sizes in some of our AP courses and allows for a little bit more flexibility in teacher schedules, we're going to be doing kind of some alternating year offerings for some of our AP classes. So for next year, the ones that are bolded are the ones that will be taught next year. And then the ones that are not bolded will be taught the opposite year. So both are listed in the program of studies, and in the program of studies itself, it lists when, like whether or not it's being taught next year. So for example, AP literature and comprehension typically is a 12th grade course, but it can be taken either 11th or 12th grade. And so we'll combine students 11th and 12th grade. AP psychology, put it on a rotation with psychology. So if students took psychology this year, they could be ready to take AP psychology next year, and that would be on a rotation. Same with AP European history on a rotation with AP US history, and AP biology on a rotation with AP environmental science. For the innovation pathways, we have some new courses. We're adding a medical terminology course as a requirement for students in the healthcare and social assistance class. That's going to be a 1-semester course. We're adding the Project Lead the Way Introduction to Engineering Design course for the manufacturing. That will be kind of the first required course for the manufacturing program, but it will be open to IP students and non-innovation pathway students. It will be an elective choice for students as well. And we're adding the internship. So we're starting our first internships with Innovation Pathways next year. I'm really excited about that. And that's going to be open for both pathways, but we won't have any manufacturing internships for a couple years. But we will have some students taking the healthcare and social assistance internship next year. Some other new courses that have been added or adjusted. We added an Intro to Social Justice course. We did have a Social Justice and Conflict Resolution, but we've adjusted it to really be just Intro to Social Justice. Instead of Intro to Law, we've created the course Intro to Criminal Justice. We're adding a second Acting 2 course for theater arts. And we are working with the Department of Education on a free grant to add additional AP STEM courses through virtual high school. So it's for the next 4 years, and we selected courses that we don't currently offer in our program of studies. So again, continue to build the offerings that we have for students. So virtual high school AP Computer Science Principles, virtual high school Physics 1, which is an algebra-based physics course, and virtual high school AP Chemistry. So we're very excited to add those as well. So we did have some adjustments. We have creative writing and journalism that we often offer as semester courses. And just due to the staffing numbers, we don't feel like we can offer those next year. So we've removed them from the course of studies. We removed trades math, which is a course that's not been used for a number of years. MCAS prep, we had a specific MCAS prep class that was math only. We renamed it Math Laboratory, which we have ELA laboratory classes. Those are classes to really support students with some foundational skills. So it's more than just MCAS prep. So we wanted to make that change. We removed Spanish 5 for next year because our current students in Spanish 4 are all seniors. So there's no one eligible. Like I said, we removed the social justice and conflict resolution course. We removed embodied leadership. It's a course that's not run. Rise Up, which Mr. Beck was talking about. Typically, we only run one Rise Up class. We have Rise Up 1 and Rise Up 2 listed. So we've combined them for one 5-credit course as Rise Up. And we removed Leadership and Community Service, which again, another course that hasn't been used in a number of years. So we wanted the program of studies to directly reflect what we are offering for next year. And just for transparency and some clarity, we are in the scheduling timeline process. So hopefully you'll approve tonight and we'll be able to create the new year in our Reddiker Plus portal system and start adding any of our new courses. We're writing into an advisory lesson to make sure all students grades 9 through 11 can enroll and put their requests right into Plus portals. During the staff meeting on April 6th, teachers are going to do recommendations. And then we're going to post the program of studies and put out information for families about how to start registering. Again, the opening registration will be from April 8th through April 15th. And that'll be for current grades 9 through 11. And our 8th graders who will be rising 9th graders will do this all on paper. And then we will do all the magic behind the scenes and create schedules for students to have before they leave for summer. So I know that was a lot of explanation, a lot of talking. So please, if you have any questions, let me know.
Jennifer?
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, I know that you gave some script or explanation sort of while you were going through about like kind of why, sort of why, but or at least your thinking behind removing or changing or combining. And I'm just wondering, the metrics, was it just a matter of like who signed up for what, or was it, I mean, it's been many decades since I was in high school, but I know that like the folks who help you sign up kind of guide you in one direction or another. And so I'm just, or is it more just trend based on what is more popular in general? I'm just curious about like your process for how you decided what to keep or what to change.
Sure. So the reason the program of studies has typically every year it gets approved and updated, and but what we had seen from Beth Fortin, who is the guidance counselor, as well as some other teachers who have been there for a while, is that we leave in things that we like kids haven't taken in a number of years. So that's what we did, is we really wanted to put forth everything we felt like we could actually offer. and not anything we couldn't, so that we could allow for flexibility in teacher scheduling as well as registration to go as smoothly as possible. So students haven't told us yet what they want. So we've created this. Again, there was a period of time where teachers did some proposing of new courses that got implemented, updated everything to create a cohesive program of studies. And then once teachers kind of do the behind the scenes recommendations for students on, whether or not they should take certain courses, whether it should be honors courses or college prep level, or they recommend this math versus another math. Once that happens, it becomes open to students and families. So students and families will see all those recommendations and they'll be able to see everything that's being offered. And when they go in, they'll make their own choices. And then that's how we will actually build out the schedule, is based on the selections from students. So for example, if there's something that no one signs up for, we're not going to run that course. If there's a course where there's a lot of interest, we might have to create 2 sections. And so that all happens after students give us their input.
Anyone else?
Wait, sorry, can I ask a follow-up question?
Mhm.
So I'm just curious, is it because students are young? I mean, like, what is the rationale behind not checking in with the students, like not having a good understanding of what the students might want? Is it just because like they're young and what do they know? Or I don't know, maybe it's not up to them or something, but I'm just curious because it seems interesting. It seems like an interesting approach to not at least like find out, maybe that you don't make those choices about what students want for reasons that adults would have, but it seems like a reasonable first place to start. As a person who's worked in marketing for
There's
decades.
requirements that the state makes, like there's requirements as to like what students also have to take. So there's not as much choice, I think.
And every year, Jennifer, the course first of all, teachers do survey students as they go through the process of developing new courses and as we go through the process of trying to implement new programming. But the course registration process each year gives us data, and the idea of removing or eliminating courses and adding new courses in is really based on that interest that students give feedback to teachers with whom they have a relationship. And teachers work with their department chairs and ultimately the principal to develop new courses based on the informal feedback of students. But the registration process from year to year is an actual, hard data survey. And many of the courses, in particular the elective courses that had previously had low levels of enrollment, there just wasn't the interest there. So it makes sense to bring in new courses that would cultivate interest. So I don't want you to think at all that the adults are just saying, here it is. That's not the case at all. We do definitely get student input. And Jean and I, as former high school principals, that's one of the things that we really depend on, is that student feedback at minimum through the registration process. And having a small school, we get a chance to get it in person with students as well.
Thank you so much. I wasn't making any accusations. I was just simply trying to get a grip of it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Jean. And this is something we do need to vote on. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed program of study.
I'll move it.
I'll
Bill
second it.
and Heather seconded. Cassie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Bill?
Can I have a question first?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. I thought I didn't see any more hands. I'm sorry.
That's all right. It was in passing. I'm just curious. There was one mention of inability to provide a course because of certification in that field of study. Is certification an issue in many areas in terms of being able to staff specific courses, or are we doing pretty well? And beyond that, I'll say yes.
Yeah, I think we're doing pretty well with certifications. I think you might be referencing the creative writing and journalism course, and that has a lot to do with just the number of staff that we have available and the requirements that students have for English language arts having 4 years. So hopefully we can devise the way in the future to get additional staff in the ELA department to bring courses like that back.
Thanks, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Jennifer,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and me, yes. Thank you, and thank you again, Jean and Brian, for that information. Next item under business, a discussion of the MSBA Statement of Interest for the Gill Elementary School roof. This is also a vote. This is also a rerun of the past X amount of years. We're just gonna try it again. Is that right, Joanne?
That's right.
So basically, it's the same proposal. How many years have we proposed it?
I believe this is year 6 that we're
So,
submitting,
yeah, so we're gonna give it another try if it's okay with everyone.
right? So Heath and I took a look at the prior year submissions and we expanded upon the descriptions a little bit. What you see
Okay.
here is a little bit of an expansion on what we had submitted. The other thing that we haven't received it yet, but we have our building condition assessment report coming. And so I think that will help us because we've had the building assessed and we know what is out there. And as soon as we receive the final copy of that, we're going to forward it off to them.
Thank you.
Hopefully they
I
don't
thought-
require it immediately.
Right, I thought I remembered that, and I think both of those things are helpful. See what
Yeah.
else they're looking for and then give them that information.
Yes.
Thank you.
So your vote does need to be the specific language.
Okay, give it to us and whoever moves it will say that's what they said.
Okay. Having convened an open meeting on March 22nd, 2022, prior to the closing date, the school committee of the Gill-Montague Regional School District, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated March 11th, 2022. And that date may change to tomorrow when I submit it, so maybe it's March 23rd, 2022. For the Gill Elementary School located at 48 Boyle Road, Gill, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and priority categories for which the application may be submitted to the Mass School Building Authority in the future. Gill Elementary School roof replacement, which was last replaced in 1995 with asphalt shingles, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts State School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the regional school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Okay, so that's the motion that someone is making. Who'd like to make that?
I did
I
just make
love
it.
it.
I think Heather said that, didn't she? Yes, Heather made that motion. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jennifer. So we have a motion and a second. We'll need a roll call vote. Cassie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
John.
Yes, and I have a question. It's just sort of procedural. And that is this the process that we would go through for the new construction? It would be if in the event that the building was voted on, is this the same thing that would happen?
I think it would be similar. So
Okay.
this is, it's called an accelerated repair program. And so the vote language, the process might be a little bit different, but I think it will be similar. I
Okay,
just
thank you.
haven't done a lot of research on that one yet.
Okay, thank you. And I believe you also said yes, right, John? And me, yes, as well. Thank you. That's unanimous. Moving on, we have four policies that are simply updates from the Mass Association of School Committees. Their recommendations are updating the language. So it's, I believe, remind me if I forget, Brian.
Policy AC, which is a non-discrimination policy, including harassment and retaliation.
Yep.
ACR, which is also related and deals with students. JICK is harassment of students. And ACAB, which we actually updated earlier this school year, with some slightly different language specifically related to sexual harassment in policy ACAB. So they're all centered around civil rights, and these are just the templates that came from MASC so that, school committee was aware of the recommended language as part of the
Yes.
first reading.
This is only a first reading. Thank you, Brian. So we will bring it back 2 more times before we approve it. But again, the Mass Association of School Committees keeps us up to date on recommended language improvements. The policies themselves are pretty traditional, but the improvements need to be made on occasion. So if there are any questions now, great. Otherwise, we'll bring them up 2 more times before a vote. Okay, thank you. Next is something we've already discussed, but we do have to take a vote on it. It's a discussion regarding the 20-year solar project. We did discuss.
Dana, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just curious that with some other issues, if we're not looking at adopting it, I don't know as though we need to take a vote. We can just let the issue pass. Is that
Okay.
accurate?
That's a good question. I don't believe we need to vote.
We would only need to vote to approve it if we were entering into a contract, I believe.
True, because we hadn't already gotten involved. So good point. We don't need to vote it. I think we already had our discussion, correct? Nobody seemed to want to talk us into it. So I think we can move on. Thank you. Thank you. We have the revised 2022-2023 school calendar. This will require a vote. There's an updated version. And Brian, could you tell us about the updates?
Yep. So after the previous meeting, I was glad that, prior to the meeting that Jane pointed out, we usually do have it on twice. I did have some feedback from some staff, some members of the association I thought had made some really good points. And so I also took the time to inquire of other local school districts, the districts that are closest to us. And we certainly would have been starting school earlier than any of the other districts. And really our focus was to try to get to the 4-day weekend for Labor Day. So this is slightly different. Really, the only changes are that rather than having staff start on August 24th, with this proposed calendar, staff would be beginning on Monday, August 29th, which gives them a cleaner start date. We lose the 4-day weekend. However, we do start off with students having a 2-day week, which worked well this year, easing them back from summer into the schools. And then students would start on September 1st as opposed to August 29th, which gives them a little bit longer summer. And the only addition that comes after that in terms of, or the only changes that come after that, obviously it impacts the start for kindergarten. And the first day would be September 8th. And the end of the school year gets pushed back by only 2 days. So the last day for students, rather than being Monday, June 12th, as scheduled, would be Wednesday, the 14th. And the reason we had to push it back by 2 days is we again, have a normal 3-day weekend in this calendar around Labor Day rather than 2. I'm sorry, rather than 4.
Okay, any other questions about the changes or the calendar in general? Okay, in that case, we will need a vote for that. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Bill.
Second.
And second, Heather. Any other questions? All right, we'll have a roll call vote. Cassie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Excuse me, yes.
John,
Yes.
and me. Yes, thank you. Next item, addressing pandemic learning loss.
I'd like to again invite Jean and also Diane Ellis, who have done a really significant amount of work to put together our summer program. As you know, last year, Diane really did a fantastic job of putting together a summer program that was probably the largest summer program that we've had at the school because of the learning loss that's occurred during the pandemic. We are planning something similar for next summer. So I'll hand it over to you two.
Thank you. Then you want to start? I can share the screen.
Sure. So Jean and I met and we really, kind of did we sort of deconstructed what went well last year in terms of the programming, and also, had a chance to be sort of very, say, realistic about some of the challenges, right? So we started our summer program planning for lots of different reasons. Much later in the year. So we're feeling really good that it's March. Hooray. It is March and we have this menu of options planned. So that feels good. Working with a much better timeline. We've had staff who've approached us who were interested, and I know staffing was definitely a challenge last year. So we're feeling good about the timeline. We're feeling good about some of the initial feedback from staff. And the other piece that I wanted to be able to share is that we really felt very committed to having an inclusive program. So our students who are identified as qualifying for extended year services on the virtue of an IEP plan or education plan, we really didn't want to offer parallel programs for students. And so we essentially are combining students with disabilities to be well served in classroom environments with students who are recommended by referral, by invitation, shall we say, from their classroom teachers. And so Jean has coined sort of the academy idea. So elementary academies, middle school academies, as well as our ESY or extended school year services. And so we've put together this menu option. Another real positive that we wanted to bring back from last year. I'm trying to drive on your document and I realized that I can't scroll down. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Jean's document. So another real positive is this idea of our Rising Stars middle high school youth leaders. We had a cohort of students last year who completed an application, who were in this voluntary work program. It was stipend, and it gave them an opportunity to, have sort of work readiness skills, everything from having an application to, to participating in the interview, to having timesheets, to being able to, work in a role in our elementary programs and supporting younger students. So putting them in a positive leadership role. And so we wanted to have the Rising Star program, as well as sort of a remake of our peer leaders in training, which is something that we had offered through our Safe Schools grant last year with some of our rising fifth graders. Can you all still hear me? I'm having some mic issues. And so really looking at, again, peer leaders in training and bringing together a group of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students and doing some additional work related to training active bystanders, looking at conflict resolution skills, mediation skills, and helping prepare a cohort of middle school students to assume sort of positive leadership roles going into the new school year. And then lastly, as an offering, really having a place where we can put together summer reading lists and recommended online learning activities, sort of the virtual adventures in summer learning. So families can easily access that on our website, want to know what recommended reading is for 4th grade or 7th grade or what have you. It's sort of one-stop shopping where people can go and access this information. And then also, if you could scroll down, continuing with these community affiliated programs. So we had a affiliation with Parks and Rec last year where we were able to provide a limited number of sponsored spots. We want to be able to do that again. That was an important positive social, recreational, and structured day camp experience for students who really benefited from that last year. We want to increase the collaboration with Parks and Rec and likely the Montague Town Library. So participants who are sponsored by the district have a commitment to participating in the library reading program and having a check-in with district staff on how they're doing over the summer. And then additionally, the 21st Century program, which is a grant that is operated through the collaborative that offers our after-school program at Sheffield. So basically allowing families an opportunity to put together a full day of coverage, right? So if your student is coming to the academic academy or extended year services for special education, if you're coming in for a district program, being able to have breakfast and lunch, have your academics, and then participate in the 21st Century for structured recreation and enrichment in the afternoon. And that seemed really successful for families to be able to have the full day option. And then lastly, as a kind of a public service with Stacy Lanknecht as our family engagement person, we're putting together a listing of area camp programs so that families can just have that information available. So I'm speaking here. Jean, anything that you want to add to this? And I mean, I guess the dates are there. People have had a chance to see that.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, as we build the invitations for students, teachers will be using a criteria to make a recommendation for students who might need some additional support, kind of considering a tier 2 level intervention and support throughout the summer. And those might be students with or without disabilities. And I'm very excited that we're also doing the Step Up to Kindergarten program as well, which will align with the elementary and secondary academies. So that's it.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
Bill?
Do all of these programs take place in their respective school buildings, age limited, or are they all in a common place like at the high school or Sheffield?
It's a great question, Bill. Every year, you know, there's the debate of where should we host the elementary program, right? Just in terms of what's happening for major projects and other things. So Sheffield has drawn the lucky straw each year because, you know, last year we had the Gill school floors happening, and I believe there is a capital project happening at Hillcrest this summer. So it will be at Sheffield, and so we do have to coordinate around moving some furniture and things to make the classroom spaces, smaller chairs, that kind of thing for our for our younger students to be able to be well accommodated at Sheffield. The other thing from a staffing standpoint, so younger kids pre-K to 5 will be at Sheffield, and middle and high school will be in the middle and high school building. That allows us to have 2 on-site nurses rather than having a nurse who's trying to travel from cover another, given the needs of our students.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Thank you. And these programs are open to anyone, or is it dictated by like the teacher of the current year, or how does that work?
So they are going to be by invitation only. So we're going to be having teachers make the recommendations, and then we will send an invitation to the family asking them, you know, whether they accept to come to the summer program or not. And the only place, so the Rising Stars is a place where someone could apply, a student, and the Peer Leaders in Training would have a teacher recommendation. But yeah, right now, these would all be things that would be recommended in order to really support that learning loss.
And I just want to add on to that, Jennifer. We served a lot of students in our elementary program last year. So Jean has put out a selection criteria for teachers that are really based on their academic performance levels, right? So if we have somebody who really could use a little bit of extended time, to address learning loss, to address kind of skill development, to invite them to come to our summer program. Part of it is dependent upon staffing, right? So, if we have it open to all folks and suddenly we realize that we don't have the staffing to support it. So I'd love to have the opposite problem. I'd love to have lots of staff and be able to have it open to everyone who is interested in participating, which is what we were able to do last year. So last year we had students who were definitely recommended. We also had families who said, hey, I think my child could really benefit from this, even though they weren't flagged as a student who was at significant academic risk. The family just wanted to have that time for their child to be in a structured academic program.
So if the teachers are making the recommendations, how would the parents even know that the program exists?
So
Well,
once we have oh, go ahead, Dan.
Well, I was going to say for special education students, that process is really pretty clear, right? So we send out communications to families that their child has extended school year services as part of an IEP that's been a recommendation by the team. So we have a legal requirement to provide that service. And we do have some families who decline extended year service because the child may, spend the summer out of state at a family camp, or what, the cases may be. So we need to get a sense of what those numbers are and who is committed to coming to our summer program. And then we are also, last year, this lovely chart that was on the screen, that was shared out with families and that was on our website, right? So we had opened it up when we were clear that we had the staffing to serve a broader number of children. We opened it up and we did send out invitations to families. So a mailing goes out, description of the program goes out. We're trying to, again, be using data to make those decisions in terms of higher level of need.
So sorry, predominantly this, and I'm just seeing these programs and thinking very generally. So I didn't realize that it's predominantly for special education, because I understand that there's been a lot of learning loss across the board. And so I'm just curious kind of generally how that's being approached, like attacked or like approached.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say it's
so
not predominantly for special ed. I just want to clarify that point, Jennifer. It's not predominantly
Sorry,
for
I thought
special
that's
ed.
what you said. I apologize.
No.
Yeah, so
I'm
we
really
combine the, sorry,
Point of
I was saying we
ignorance, so
combine the
I'm
ESY
learning.
and this idea, the extended services program, and then the academy idea together because we want it to be an inclusive experience. But the recommendations for students to attend what we're calling the academy, which is would be for students with or without disabilities, and it's specifically, and that's really one of the reasons why we're not opening it up to people to sign up, is because we want to be able to provide that layer of students who may not typically get summer services because they aren't they don't have an IEP that dictates that we provide some support so that we can take some of the students who are really below grade level and get them up ready for the next grade. So it's an inclusive program, but it will be students both with or without disabilities.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I think we're good. Thank you both very much. Again, it looks like a great selection of offerings in this hour. Thank you both so much for that. Moving on, I think that was all under that topic, right, Brian? Okay. Just two quick ones that I thought I should put on for information: a discussion about the open Montague School Committee seats. School committee members probably would be more aware of this, but the community might wonder why there were quite so many seats to be voted on this year. It has a couple of reasons that we have so many this year, Gil. There's one 3-year seat. It happens to be mine. The term is up, as it usually is. And one of the 3-year seats in Montague is the same thing. It's Heather's seat. It's up this year. The other 3-year seat was occupied by Mike, and unfortunately Mike passed, and we're fortunate we had someone, Gary Turn has been appointed, but all of the vacancies that occur during the year are only filled until the next annual election. So it will mean that that will be an open seat. People can pick up papers for. The 2-year seat that Nick is now in was also a vacancy when someone had to leave. And the 1-year seat that John is filling is also the remainder of a term that someone had to leave that could not complete. So the regional agreement is set up so that we can't have all those people generally elected in the same year. Usually it's only if someone's term is expiring in an unusual manner. So there is 1 Gill seat that's 3 years, 2 Montague seats, 3 years each, a Montague seat that's a 2-year seat, and a Montague seat that's a 1-year seat. So I'm sure that doesn't clarify it, but that's what's out there. And because of a lot of reasons. So those papers are available from Sabrina in the office. Signatures will need to be acquired, and it will need to be submitted to her by 4 p.m. on Monday, March 28th, so that it can then go on the ballot for the annual election in May. Any questions about that? John?
So it would mean that you would apply for whichever of those open seats your
Absolutely.
heart desires, or
Right. It's
Okay.
not whatever one you happen to be in
Okay.
isn't necessarily the one you would have to take out papers for. That's absolutely your choice.
Okay. Now, on the papers, what kind of signatures are needed?
Any
Is-
registered voter in either Gill or Montague.
I see. You mean so it's just one, the signature of the candidate, or the other
No, the
signatures?
candidate, any candidate has to obtain 10 signatures.
I see.
from
Okay.
any
Okay.
Gill
Okay.
or Montague
All
resident,
right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
because they both towns vote for
Yeah.
both.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. And the other is just a quick mention of
We lost you, Jane.
She was going to talk about MASC as a just as a resource.
back.
Yeah, back now.
Okay, did any of it happen? I'll start that over. The Mass Association of School Committees is abbreviated MASC. They're a larger group to which almost all school committees in the state belong. They provide us a lot of information about policies, for instance, updating policies. They provide people that we can hire to help if we're searching for a superintendent. They hold workshops. They do any number of things to support school committee. I wanted to mention it just to be sure that all of you as members of the school committee, we are updating our membership list, and you should be receiving emails from them. If you're new and you're not yet, you should soon, and even occasionally a paper mailing. Our area, we are considered to be part of Division 5, and each division during the year also tries to offer workshops either virtually or in person. For this year and next year, I am vice chair of the Division 5 group at the state level. So we'll be offering some workshops, hopefully, and perhaps a new program of mentorship we're hoping to work on for school committee members, maybe.
Wow.
So if you see those letters, you'll know what it is, and check the email if you get one from them. Okay. The next item, approval of minutes. We have February 8th, February 15th. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve them all at once, if that's okay.
I'll move it.
Thanks, Bill.
Second,
Second, Jennifer. Any questions or comments about the minutes? Okay, Cassie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jennifer,
yes,
John,
Yes.
and me.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Agenda requests, as always, please submit them to Brian, Cassie, and myself. We generally now have our meeting on Monday evenings whenever possible to get the next packet ready. The next scheduled meetings will be, let's check my calendar. Oh, hang on, it didn't show up on here, so. It looks like April 12th and April 26th. If I'm looking at it correctly, and they will still be virtual for the time being. And I guess we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
One question,
Sure, Bill.
in light of schools opening up and so on, and the mask thing, is there any time soon that you're going to want people signing off on the warrants and actually doing it rather than you just doing it?
That's a question that I think we should approach next time, as well as again discussing in person as opposed to remote meetings in general. I think, good point.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, because generally the warrant subcommittee would meet just prior to the regular meeting when we were in person. And that was all
Right.
accomplished at the same
Okay.
time. Okay, thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Move that too.
Thanks, Bill.
Yep.
And Heather, second. Any other discussion about that? Okay. Cassie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and myself. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.